Hello all, this is the Owl, and here we are. April's nearly done and finished the month out, the last of my pending request videos. Well, okay, except for that one. That's going to have to be something for a later date, because I'm trying to read that manga and it makes my brain squeak. Now, I must say, when Kelcor, who yes, I owed because I've left the poor chap off the mentions list for some reason, my bad mate, picked Bleach, my initial thought was, oh boy. See, I love Bleach, but I hate Bleach. But ooh, I love Bleach, but damn it, I hate it. I love the awesome transformations and the battles, but I hate how barren the time between these moments feel. I love the quirky side characters and villains, but I hate how most of the great characters get killed off really fast, usually in pretty anticlimactic ways, and the main cast are about as exciting as a bread sandwich. It's a complicated one, folks, and today we're going to be taking a slightly deeper look at why. Now, I did cover Bleach a bit back when I did the first in my top 50 series, which, yeah, I didn't do part 2 of yet because it got sod all views, and yeah, there's going to be a little bit of redundancy between this video and that one. So, where do you start with something as big, influential, and contentious as Bleach? Well, the beginning, I guess. Because the story of how Bleach came into being is, if not more interesting than the actual manga, pretty damn close. Troubled Hiroshima-born Tite Kubo had always dreamed of being a mangaka, and at last was given his big break, a shot at publication in frigging Shonen Jump. This was his little-known manga Zombie Powder, and it didn't go well, getting cancelled not even 30 chapters in, which, by the sounds of it, was pretty devastating. However, Kubo had an idea for another series, kicking around in the old noggin for a while, a wild-ass story involving Shinigami. Don't worry, we'll get to that later. Battling corrupted souls called Hollows, and he pitched it to Jump, who basically told him to kick dust. Woof. It's entirely possible that our tale would have ended there if frigging Akira Toriyama, yeah, that Akira Toriyama, hadn't stepped in personally, seeing potential here and encouraging Kubo to refine his idea and keep running with it. Initially called Snipe, as the Shinigami would apparently have had guns, and yes, I'm pretty sure that Soifon's Bankai is a direct reference to this. The manga then became white and finally ended on Bleach, with the Shinigami now rocking more of a feudal Japanese look, with their iconic black hakamas and katanas. With the more refined story and the support of Toriyama, Jump eventually reconsidered and, hey presto, Bleach became a smash hit. The double juggernaut of One Piece and Naruto was joined by a third manga. And no, I'm not kidding. This might sound weird to folks who got into manga later on, I guess after the Viz boom, but there was a time when this thing was enormous. Cosplay, video games, a wild and woolly fandom that was surprisingly international, which gradually turned on the manga, but we'll get there later. And while Bleach is seeing a minor resurgence now, thanks to the anime adaptation of the final arc, which I hear is pretty good. Yeah, sorry chaps and chapettes. I wish I had time for an anime right now, but Baby Owl is keeping me on the hop. Bleach was almost completely forgotten for over a decade. It's a divisive manga. Why? Well, let's take a look. Oh right, before we get the ball rolling, this video is going to contain a ton of spoilers. If you haven't read Bleach yet, it's at a balance probably worth it, so feel free to go and do that first. Drop by in the comments and let me know what you thought at the end of the day. otherwise. High Schooler Ichigo is that character. You know the one. Shonen protagonist type B, delinquent with heart of gold. Only he has the ability to, okay, I'll say it, he sees dead people. After he gets caught in a battle between a bizarre monster and a beautiful sword-wielding warrior by the name of Rukia, he ends up getting Rukia's powers and becomes a Shinigami. Now, I don't usually comment on translations too much, but this one's always got right up my urethra. Shinigami translates directly into Death God, which sounds a bit ostentatious in English. I guess the closest we would have is Grim Reaper, which would have been pretty boss. But no. The official translation insisted on going with Soul Reaper, which, yeah, it's another Zolo situation, and it's always sounded kind of daft to me. Yeah. Bleach can be divided into several arcs, and the first arc is probably the weakest. It's just a sequence of Monster of the Week stories, bookended by ridiculously bland high school stuff. Monster appears, Monster threatens one of Ichigo's friends, Ichigo gets smacked around a bit, Ichigo kills Monster. And when I first started reading this thing, I nearly threw in the towel right there. The story does kick it up a notch, with the arrival of mysterious archer Ishida, and some of Ichigo's friends developing abilities of their own and getting added to the regular combat cast, including the stalwart Chad, yeah, that's still really funny, and the saintly love interest Orihime. Soon after this, more Shinigami arrive to arrest Rukia for, I still do not really understand the story of this next arc. But whatever, she apparently did a really bad thing by letting Ichigo become a Shinigami, and because of this is going to be executed. The cold, beautiful, and impossibly powerful fan favorite, and subject of a lot of very odd fanfiction Byakuya, claps Ichigo's cheeks, and we get into what I consider to be the real Bleach, with Ichigo and his friends forming a posse and heading into Soul Society, the part of the afterlife governed by the Shinigami, very feudal Japan, to beat them down and rescue Rukia before she's executed. This is where the story actually starts to get good, because, drumroll, we get to meet by far the best part of the manga, the other Shinigami, particularly the captains, and these include some truly great characters, including my personal favorite, the Batnuts insane battle-obsessed berserker Zaraki. This guy is just so much fun. The story now mostly pivots on battles between Ichigo or his friends and the Shinigami, which for the most part involves them powering up and transforming. And yep, that's the real hook of Bleach, the transformations. You've got the base katana form of the Soul Reaper sword, but these swords have a name. Say the name, and it goes Shikai. Do some other stuff, and you can reach Bankai, which, yeah, let's all be honest here, Bleach fans. These were mostly why we kept reading. This arc eventually culminates with Ichigo getting his own Bankai, which, yep, frigging awesome, and he beats Byakuya's butt, before the big bad is finally revealed in a reasonably good twist. The mild-mannered Captain Aizen is actually an evil powerhouse who engineered the entire situation and wants to do stuff. Yeah, sorry, story is not Bleach's strong point, but it involves creating a fusion of Shinigami and Hollow in the heavily Mexican-inspired afterlife of Hueco Mundo. The next arc is, in my opinion, the best part of Bleach, and I don't think many people would argue with me. An extremely long and extremely kick-ass arc, where Ichigo, the Shinigami, and others must learn to work together and prepare to do battle with Aizen and his forces, most notably the Arrancar, hollows who have been awakened with Shinigami-like transformations, and these guys, yeah, no, this rules. The arc is mostly fight after fight, but that is where Bleach is absolutely the strongest, and some of the Arrancar themselves are also great characters, particularly Halibel, Ulquiorra, Grimjaw, and no, I will never forgive Tite Kubo for how dirty he did my boy Stark. By a mile, the best character in the entire sodding manga. Come at me. At the time, I thought that it was going to be the end of the manga, and even now, if I were to be honest, that would have been great. Aizen becomes more or less a god, Ichigo makes a really devastating sacrifice to get the power to beat Aizen, and we get a truly beautiful ending in a chapter simply titled Arigato, or thank you. In short, Ichigo permanently loses his powers, and as everyone he's met along the way, his friends and he share a tearful goodbye, they all fade away. Really, really touching, got me right in the feels, and if this had been where Bleach had ended, I think it would have been a lot more fondly remembered. A solid final arc, a conclusive, victorious, if slightly melancholy ending, and a healthy run. But, alas, it was not meant to be. And folks, there are dark days ahead. There is a trope in storytelling. It occurs pretty much universally, and it's one of my absolute worst bugaboos when it comes to creative writing. What's a good example? Remember Gravity Falls. Remember that final confrontation and how a character had to make a really tragic, meaningful sacrifice in order to beat the big bad, and how it made the ending both triumphant and melancholy, as our two protagonists learned that nothing is forever, that we need to enjoy our time with our family while we can, and growing up a bit essentially. Only, nope, of course not. The entire thing was undone in a few minutes with a gigantic Deus Ex Machina, totally undermining said sacrifice and making me want to eat my own hands. Yup, it's one of those. I've still got to think of a good name for this trope. Let me know in the comments if you have one. But it's basically an attempt to have your cake and eat it too, narratively speaking. At least for me, I find that it tends to go a long way towards spoiling what could be really great endings. The sacrifice undone? I don't know. Bleach, regardless, is ground zero for this, as the next and probably its most widely hated arc begins. The so-called Fullbring arc only really exists to introduce a gigantic retcon mechanic, which allows Ichigo's powers to come back, and we get back to the status quo. Bloody hell, man. And this all culminates in the final arc, the Blood War, where the Shinigami face off against the Quincy's. An obvious Nazi analog because Japan. And while I don't hate this arc, if I had to be honest, I don't love it either. And this isn't helped by the saccharine sweet and contrived ending where everyone gets married and has kids, and spoiler, Ichigo ends up with by far the lesser of the two waifus. So yeah, the reasons why Bleach is divisive are pretty easy to point out. The undermined sacrifice, we already covered that. But beyond this, the thing's a structural mess, and more importantly, Ichigo is just a terrible protagonist. What arc he has is resolved stupidly early, like volume 4 out of nearly 80 early. No, I am not kidding. And for the rest of the series, he is entirely reactive. and really just there to fight and move the plot forwards, with his only motivation being, "I want to protect my friends." Blow me. The other main characters are also, frankly, just as bad. Yes, okay, there is one exception. Rukia, you're not too bad at times, you get a pass. The periods of the story between the battles range from okay to holy crap, can I just skip this please? And the comedy very rarely lands. And I still have no idea why the story didn't just end after Aizen. Yes, I know that Kubo planned it out like this, and that it wasn't some contractual or publisher-related shenanigans, as I've almost wishfully believed over the years, but that makes it worse. That's like restoring a classic car and painting it beige. And I could go on. But then, why was it so popular, and why do I still like it? Well, for one, the battles are absolutely frigging incredible. The art, while not quite at the level of something like Tokyo Ghoul, was definitely above par for the era, and also managed to do some really creative paneling and structure. Add in the ingenious hook of the transforming swords, some ridiculous power creep, and a bucket load of style, and yeah, Bleach is pretty badass. There's just this coolness to the entire thing. The idea of Shinigami, Soul Society, the named transforming swords, and the stupidly overpowered baddies are a definite draw for those of us who have the tastes of a 12-year-old sometimes. Maybe calling Bleach a guilty pleasure would be most accurate. But if so, it's one hell of a pleasure, because, as I've mentioned, I do, for some reason, really enjoy Bleach. And it clearly did something right, because I have reread this stupid thing from start to finish at least a half dozen times. It's not perfect, but then again, what is? Besides Higurashi. And who knows? If there is enough demand, Bleach may even get a deep dive at some distant, glistening future date. Before I finish for the day, I want to give a huge thanks, as always, to my fantastic patrons: Astrixa Gaming, Piece of Yeast, Elspresso, Cheerful Satanist, Starwin Marwin, Hylord J, B Empress, Kel Core, Jacob Ramsey, Crazy, James Bakes Bread, Wargle, Lance Goebel, Paul Norberger, Rafferty, Aaron Arnold, The Hedgehog Gamer, Simone, and XTC Pill. If you want to see more like this, why not stick around? Subscribe, bell, you know the drill. If you want to hear me say your name, get early access to most of my videos, have some fun perks on our Discord, and, you know, buy Baby Owl some food and ensure that I can keep on doing what I do, why not take a look at our Patreon? All the links are in the description. So, what do you think of Bleach? Good, bad, guilty pleasure, or modern classic? Once again, let me know in the comments. Take care, my friends, and cheers. Next week, well, the very, very special thing is going to take one more week. So, what else do we have in the bag? Ooh, that might just do it. Until then, this is the Owl, signing off.